In its opening moments itself, the television adaptation of Stephen King's The Institute reveals the nature and extent of its main character Luke Ellis' powers and supernatural abilities. It seems likely that as the show progresses, his powers, too, will go through massive changes and perhaps even grow in intensity based on his surroundings. However, in the beginning, the representation of his abilities and their limits seems fairly simple and one-dimensional. The television Stephen King adaptation seems to lurk in familiar narrative territory when it portrays Luke Ellis as a supernaturally gifted young boy who gets abducted by a mysterious organization. After Luke ends up in the titular facility, the series introduces many similar characters who either have the same powers as Luke or belong to a slightly different category of psychic abilities. Based on these early developments, it can be hard to predict where the Stephen King TV show will go. However, the revelations surrounding Luke's powers might be a subtle giveaway of what the future holds for him. Luke has telekinetic powers. He is portrayed as a NEG in the series' opening moments. Even before Luke ends up in the titular facility in the series, the Institute establishes that he has telekinetic powers. Every time he is under emotional duress in the show's early moments, he unknowingly ends up moving an object around him. He or the people around him, however, do not notice his abilities. Luke only realizes he is telekinetic when he ends up in the facility and meets Kalisha, who reveals the Institute only accommodates children with two supernatural powers, telekinesis and telepathy. This is when Luke connects the dots and realizes that his experiences of moving objects were manifestations of his ability. The main character later meets other children at the facility, who ask him if he is a NEG or a POS. When Luke asks them what that means, a boy named George explains that a NEG, negative telekinetic, is someone who cannot willingly control their ability. A POS, positive telekinetic, on the other hand, has some control over their powers. Realizing that he has never knowingly made objects move, Luke confirms he is a negative. This is when George shows him his POS powers by making the water from a glass float. Luke develops more powers in the Institute book. He eventually starts showing telepathic abilities. The book cover picture from Stephen King's The Institute. In the original Stephen King book, the people at the Central Institute experiment on children with existing supernatural abilities in the hope of enhancing their powers. After being extensively experimented on, Luke not only ends up having better control over his telekinesis but also starts developing telepathic powers. The book never delves into the details of how Luke and the other children acquired their powers in the first place. This makes it hard not to assume that they were naturally born with it. What gives Luke a significant edge over others in the Institute is that he is also extremely intelligent, which allows him to stay one step ahead of the evil forces running the titular facility.